Okay, so let's learn a little bit about looping in Reaper. So there are two ways in which you can loop things. One isn't really a loop. It's just a loop playback mode. And that's not to be confused with actual loop creating loops in the sound file or in a track. So the first type of looping is will work simply by selecting a bit of sound. So while I'll go up here so that my cursor is this kind of bar arrow in both directions, and I select a bit of sound. Let's say this, just do a small bit. And if I press the space bar, now once you get to that point, it'll just play back. But if I go over here and click on this toggle repeat, it's now stuck on there. So it's technically looping, but that's just temporary. As soon as I remove my selection, then it's all gone. Now it's just not going to do it anymore. So that's a different thing. Now let's talk about looping, let's say a little section of sound. This is kind of a long sound file, so we'll just snip a little bit of it. We'll slice this bit and that bit over here. Okay, so I'll take this much and I'll just command and drag it down here. Oops, everything is dragging along with it. That's because my ripple editing is on. So now, as you remember from another video, this region now is kind of pointing to this main sound file. So this bit of sound belongs to a longer sound file. So it's not actually a separate sound file. So if I expand a region, what Reaper will assume is that I want more of the original sound. So in that case, that would not be a very good way to let's say repeat the sound or something like that. So that's what happens there. However, if there's another thing that happens in Reaper automatically, which is that if this were a complete sound file and I would continue to drag beyond the point at which the sound file ends, then Reaper will actually assume that I want to repeat it or loop it. So in order to do that, I have to first turn this into a separate sound file. And the way to do that is to actually glue it. That's a term for that it's used in Reaper, I'm sorry. So I right click on that bit of sound, I go to glue items, and now what happens is this is no longer a part of this. This is now an independent thing. And as you can see, when I can still make it smaller, right? But then once I reach the point, the full length of the region that I created, now it'll start to repeat each time. And I can continue to drag this over and over and over and over, but it's really just one bit of sound repeating. But what's nice about this is instead of having multiple bits of sound, multiple regions, it's still one big region, but it's a lot of loops of the same region. And of course you can see when the repetitions are happening, right, because of the way the region is, it has a special shape over here. So it's quite handy. And so if I just play it, let me just isolate. Okay, so that's pretty handy. There's also one other way that you could do that. So let's make it a little bit smaller just to make it a little bit more effective. So I'll go here, right click, glue items, and then just drag it. So now you get this. And of course you could do the usual things such as transposing and changing the pitch and all that. It could be quite fun. So another way to do this would be to actually create separate repetitions, so that in that case you would actually be duplicating the file. So and to do that you would just select a bit of sound or select a region and just do Command D many times. And that's okay too, except now let's say that I want to delete all of it. You have to select the whole thing. You could still do it, it's still manageable, but it can be kind of a pain. So it all depends on what you're interested in doing. And let's say if you want short bursts of repetitions with some kind of gap in it, in that case you might use ripple editing and just kind of do this, and kind of now there's some gaps in rhythm, right? So you would get a slightly different effect. Right, so in that case that might be more what you're interested in doing. You could also do this with the loops by splicing the sound file after you've created the loops, so that should work as well. Anyway, so those are a couple of ways to deal with loops.